You won't believe this tiny powder room transformation. I want to create a really beautiful accent wall, so I start off by finding the studs. Then I start to map my design. I always like to use painter's tape, so I just taped it up onto the wall, and then I figured out how big each of the boxes should be. And when I compared to my original design, it was really starting to come together. I mean, doesn't this already look so cool? Then I started to cut my pieces and nail them to the wall. This was my first time using a brad nailer. I had never used a brad nailer before, so I was a little bit nervous, but I basically peeled off each piece and then I used my brad nailer. And you can see the hesitancy here, but this is just a testament that you can learn to use new tools and you don't need any prior experience. You ready, Moon? Of us?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, ready? I use my miter saw to make all the cuts. So anytime where you have two corners that are joining together, you want to make a 45-degree miter cut. So you set your saw to the 45-degree mark. And this is why it's so important. It just gives you a much better finish in the end when you put the two pieces together. And as you can see when I transferred to my wall, it was just as tight. This accent wall took me a very long time. I basically measured each piece and then I would cut it and then I would bring it back and attach it and so on and so forth. So I really wanted to get that perfect fit, which is why I cut almost every piece one at a time. You see how every piece is basically connected to one another? It's like a puzzle. This is why you need to cut one piece at a time so you get that perfect fit. When I finally finished cutting all the pieces, I had to remove this towel bar. It just wasn't my aesthetic, so I unscrewed it and then I also patched up the holes. If you want to give it a really professional finish, you have to fill all the nail holes and all the seams. So I went in with a wood filler and started to do that. There were some nails that didn't go in all the way, so I used this thingamajig, you can tell I'm professional, to make sure that they would go in all the way because you want them to sit underneath the surface of the wood. Since this was my first accent wall, I definitely made some mistakes. I filled the nail holes okay, but then I really overfilled some of the corners, which took forever to sand. So my tip would be, do not do this. Use the minimum amount of wood filler that you need because I ended up needing to use a power sander instead of just hand sanding it, which really took a long time. I also caulked all the edges and now we're finally ready to paint. I used this painter's tape that has this plastic attached to it because I wanted to use my sprayer. Let me tell you, using the sprayer was a big mistake. It took forever to paint this tiny room and we had to tape all around the toilet and there were still spots that you just couldn't get in and spray around. See what I mean? We literally had to cover up every single thing because the overspray is so bad in a paint sprayer. I always get asked what color I painted this wall, and this is a custom color that I mixed at Sherwin-Williams while I was there. So it's just a really beautiful color. It's linked on my blog if you're interested. Here's an unpopular opinion. I had a lot of problems with the sprayer. I couldn't get it to spray evenly, and then halfway through, the paint started to dry on the tip, so I would take it off and wash it. I do not recommend using a sprayer. It's not one of my favorite tools. And there are areas you can't spray into, so I ended up rolling. Anyways, through all that, here's the final result. It is absolutely beautiful. I think it adds so much character to this bathroom. Every single person that comes over loves this. And the best part is that I did this all under $100. So don't be afraid to try your first accent wall.